Like he posts videos like this, and he gets a lot of attention. In this episode of Boxing Science Reacts, I'm going to be reacting to the strength and conditioning methods of Ryan Garcia, showing off his incredible hand speed, which is probably his USP, not only from performance point of view, but also from his kind of social media output as well. Like he posts videos like this, and he gets a lot of attention. A lot of boxing critics and boxing coaches might critique him and say that doesn't really transfer towards boxing. But from a physical point of view, the speed that he's producing and that relaxation can transfer into a normal punch. For him to be able to throw, I don't know how many punches he's throwing within 10 seconds there, probably looking at 100 if not more punches. His ability to create that speed and intent and being able to relax can then transfer into fast and hard punches in a normal boxing setting. From a conditioning perspective, these quick bursts can increase the demand on the muscle, can increase the cardiovascular output. So doing this as part of like shadow boxing conditioning, getting more physical adaptations from that might make it psychologically harder as well, going from this into doing normal shadow boxing. But also we actually use it as part of our conditioning in terms of circuits, doing some fast, hard shadow boxing, whether that's doing the fast uppercuts or just doing some normal boxing using the feet and non-stop punching, can actually increase physical demands, spike the heart rate to work towards 90% maximum heart rate, and can help you gain more out of your circuit to promote physical adaptations. Okay, so we've got some pad work here. I'm not going to be critiquing the technique, but what I do like from this is that a lot of Ryan Garcia's kind of pad work is done in short bursts. This burst here is 10 seconds, really fast, explosive, a lot of punches. It's quite refreshing to see because in your conditioning, in your strength work, we're always looking to manipulate the volume and intensity. That isn't really replicated in boxing. All what's replicated really is the volume in terms of how many rounds that you do. The duration of them rounds are often somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes. There's a lot of place for like kind of interval pad work or interval bag work to try and target like kind of them spikes in intensity that you're likely to see within boxing or within sparring as well. Pad routine could be 15 or 20 seconds, really intense work, non-stop punching, power punches, rest for 40 to 45 seconds. So every minute on the minute, let's say 15 rounds of that, have a rest and then go again. I think like doing it in this way will promote different physical adaptations that can then transfer into dealing with them spikes in intensity that you're likely to have during sparring and boxing. So quick break to tell you more about who we are and what we do. We're Boxing Science, we're specialists in sports science in boxing, and we're based in the UK. We've worked with over 300 boxers, from amateurs, professionals, and even world champion athletes. We're specialists in strength and conditioning, nutrition, psychology, physiology, and also movement training for boxing. If you're wanting to find out more about our methods, we've got a range of different content on our YouTube channel. So if you're not a subscriber yet, hit the subscribe button for more content. But also we've got our range of programs on the Boxing Science website, including the Train Like a Champion membership, where you can access the blueprint to elite performance for just £19.99 per month. If you're wanting more information, the link is in the description. Now let's kick on with the video. Okay, so we've got some Anderson squats with the bands. I like this, something that we use at Boxing Science. What I would say is that it's done at a relatively light load. I can't see what the plate is there, but I'm guessing it's about 10 kilos each side. 40 kilos on the bar. Bands will probably add 10 kilos at the top of the range of the lift, so you're looking at 50 kilos. Of course, it's doing it for speed and intent, but the main reason for Anderson squats is to overload maximum strength. So we look to like go towards 100% to 120% of an athlete's 1 rep max, doing it at partial range loads. And this can really increase that rate of force development, increase peak force development as well. And he actually pairs this Anderson squat up with a box jump, which is called complex training, which utilizes a phenomenon called post-activation potentiation, PAP for short. And what you get from PAP is basically from the compound lift, maximum strength lift, get a range of different potentiating responses that can increase neural drive and neuromuscular output into the faster, lighter, more explosive action. So you do the lift, you rest for 1 to 2 minutes, and then you perform the box jump after it, and you'll see better response, physical response, going into them jumps. Now, what I would say with this, I can't see the rest times, but what I can see is the amount of load that he has on the lift when performing the Anderson squats. You want to be aiming for somewhere between 80% 1 rep max through to 120% 1 rep max. If you're doing partial range lifts, you want to be kind of going towards that top range and maybe super maximal lifts. For full range lifts, you want to be going somewhere between 80 and 90% 1 rep max. And this is all dependent on the genetic profile of that athlete, training situation, kind of strength training history and their strength levels as well. Very individualized. But what I would say from this clip is to get the most out of complex training, you want to be increasing the amount of load on the Anderson squat to make sure that you're getting them potentiating responses to really fire up into that box jump. So talking about his box jumps, he's doing some more box jumps here. I think this is part of a conditioning circuit, more or less the same technique that he's using. He's not really putting much force into the floor. It's kind of like on his toes and reacting. This is quite common when I see box jumps performed by boxers to get the most amount of height. They're wanting to kind of bounce off their toes. This is something that they're probably more accustomed to doing with the boxing training. You know, when they're bouncing from side to side in the boxing stance, in the shadow boxing, in the sparring, but also when they're skipping as well. So whenever we do box jumps for the first time, we'll see this technique where an athlete is kind of like light on their feet, they drop down and then they're driving up. What would like to see is more lower body involvement, so dipping the hips and knees, getting into like a counter movement jump position, driving up into hip extension and then landing on the box. Ryan Garcia doing some shoulder endurance work is something that I cover quite a lot on the YouTube channel recently, just in a Boxing Science Reacts video on Golovkin. To improve shoulder endurance, 2 key things that you need to improve. You need to improve your mobility. That shoulder endurance is potentially lacking because of the overdominance of the anterior shoulder muscles. So opening up the chest, strengthening the posterior shoulder muscles will reduce that amount of load on that anterior shoulder muscle, which will help its endurance. Improving shoulder strength. The stronger that your shoulder muscles are, the better endurance that it'll have. But there is a place for doing like kind of shoulder endurance work. The main reasons why boxers are quite tight in their shoulders, so they're quite weak overhead. Improving their strength might be limited because they can't overload them shoulder muscles, because them shoulder muscles are quite strong anyway, but because they can't lift overhead, this will limit the amount of load that they can lift, so will limit the kind of physical adaptations that you can create. So doing stuff like supersets, like what Ryan Garcia is doing here, can be quite beneficial. A shoulder press of between 5 and 10 repetitions, pairing that up with some lateral raises of 10 to 12 repetitions, or doing like a shoulder burner routine, sitting on the edge of the bench into lateral raises, into frontal, then going overhead. This is fantastic, and also using the BFR cuffs as well, using range different variations on this. So there is a place for improving shoulder endurance, but it's just doing it in the right way and making sure that you're getting the main foundations first, of improving shoulder mobility, rotational mobility first, strengthening the posterior shoulders, and then also making sure that you're increasing strength as well. Banded Spincy, I think, is using this as more of a conditioning tool, and it's something that I like, even though a lot of strength and conditioning coaches will be looking at this, and I don't think the technique is too good. I think it is flapping his arms around. It's not getting that maximal kind of sprinting action. What I would say from this, you want to make sure that you're getting them arms working in a sprinting stance, making sure you're more upright to make sure that you're pushing your hips through, and also getting the full kind of sprinting action as well, getting them knees up level with your hips. We use this tool as a warm-up tool for sprinting, potentiation, running mechanics, and then just getting their muscles fired up in the right way, like 5 or 10 second stints. Use it as a conditioning tool, as part of a circuit to help elevate that heart rate. Mainly you can use this kind of just like sprinting on the spot without the band, but also we use a lifting pad or mat, increase that lower body demand whilst reducing like kind of the impact forces that you can get from sprinting on the spot. Is basically giving you a safer way of increasing that heart rate during a circuit. Okay, so we've got some core work here. V sit-ups. Yeah, obviously he's going to get a lot of burn from this in terms of his abs, but what I would say, postural alignment isn't too great from this. You can use an alternative here. We normally do leg lowers, range of different variations you can do. You can do body weight, you can do it with weight disc, you can do it with some dumbbells, you can also do it with bands as well. And this is keeping your back flat against the floor, maintaining that postural alignment, which will have a bigger impact on your core strength and core stability. What this is doing is just working the rectus abdominals, probably creating some kyphosis here as well. You can do the reps for days on this as well. It's probably doing 30, 40, 50 repetitions. Try and increase the intensity of this and limit the reps range to between 10 and 15 repetitions, but increasing the intensity. Start off with body weight, go to weighted, and then obviously you can do it with bands as well. So looking at a lot of Ryan Garcia's conditioning work, a lot of it's done like fast and explosive, and this is meeting the demands of him as a fighter. It's fast, sharp, counter puncher, working in bursts. Now what he's doing here is doing some hill sprints. Now hill sprints is a common theme in boxing. Obviously we do most of our conditioning either on the air bike, on the curve, or on the motorized treadmill. But when we're giving athletes our remote training programs, they might not have access to this. We often advise athletes to do hill sprints when doing either the max out effort sprints or doing our repeated sprint protocols. Now the reason why we want to try and reduce the amount of impact forces on the lower limb, especially when an athlete might not have optimal running technique. An athlete is doing repeated sprint training, going in under like kind of high amounts of fatigue, producing high forces, high speeds. They will be undergoing some high impact forces. Performing this on the hill, because you're not going as high off the surface, because you're not going as fast, because it's increased demand on you, will help reduce them impact forces. And also the angle of where you're kind of contacting the floor will reduce the impact forces going through the joints and will increase the demand on the muscles instead. This also has an increased physical demand, and this is really important because boxers, really fit, really physically capable, when doing repeated sprint training, they might not be able to perform the right amount of speed and intensity to promote them physical adaptations. Now what the hill does, increases the demand on the muscles of the lower body, which will help stimulate the mechanical loading, which will help stimulate them physical adaptations. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Boxing Science Reacts. It's been great to have a look at Ryan Garcia's training. If you're not subscribed yet to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and make sure you check out our other Reacts videos. We've covered Javonta Davis, Lomachenko, Golovkin, Canelo, got a huge range of athletes that we've covered so far. And if you've got any suggestions of people that you want us to cover, whether that's in boxing, combat sports, it can be a retired fighter, leave your suggestions in the comment box below. And if you have any questions, please file them in the comment box below as well. And I'll hopefully see you on the next episode of Boxing Science Reacts.